one of the challenges of dealing with remote work is, as a leader, is recognizing why you have to deal with a sensitive situation. And I was wondering if there are any specific ideas or thoughts that you have, or phrases that you use or advise people to use when you're dealing with more sensitive topics, and but you've got to deal with them on video because you don't have a choice. Your team is scattered over 3 countries, regardless of whether you're in the office or they're in the office. Somebody isn't together, right? You're not co-located. But what have been your learnings and your ideas in that area?
So it depends on what the sensitive topics are, because there are some things that you do need to get people together for. I think if you're looking at when you say sensitive topics, I'm going to ask you a question now. Oh, this is fun. What's in your mind when you're thinking of that? Like, what's the thing that's coming to mind, whether it's stuff you've experienced or stuff you've heard about? What is there anything specific there? Because that will help me sort of really sort of dive into that.
I think there is 2 things that would come to mind for me. One would be where you've got kind of a significant organizational change, so kind of an internal factor, and that internal factor plays out on people. It has implications for people, whether because of M&A or whatever the reason is. So I guess that would be one thing, and then another thing would be kind of a broader thing. If I think about society, would maybe be kind of a broader thing in terms of things that happen in society, in the news or whatever, where people feel it and they carry it for whatever reason, like whether it's conflict or things along those lines, where they actually sometimes have a genuine personal impact on people. And it's like, do I avoid this topic? Do I speak to this topic? What do I do? What do I do?
Okay, fine. So we'll do a bit of organizational change and then a bit of sort of more societal, political stuff and kind of how we navigate that. So if it's organizational change, I've just recently written about this actually, then we have to communicate. We still have to communicate through the layers of the organization. So no matter what technology you have, the role of a line manager in communication and leadership is so important for employees. So if you're not helping them and equipping them with the tools, that makes it very, very difficult for us to communicate change effectively. So if you're doing that in a remote way, you have to do that on a video call, and it has to be cameras on. And it's okay to say, we need everyone to have their cameras on for this. So I worked with some clients where we did focus groups actually with them, and no one had their cameras on for any of the focus groups, which was fascinating to me from a cultural perspective. But also for me would be something I would be looking to change, because actually we should have cameras on if we're on a video call. So those sorts of things are important. I want to be able to see everybody. I want this to be a conversation, make space for questions. It's making space and giving people different options and different ways of being able to communicate. So if we look at a credible leader, would be someone who's supportive, who has empathy, who's trustworthy, who's vulnerable. All of those things need to come forward in an online space. And that can happen by giving people different options and ways to ask questions. You might not want to ask me on this call, but here's my email address. You can email me and I'll come back to you. That's fine. And doing that, right? Not just saying you're going to do it and then getting your assistant to do it. You have to do that. So it's creating space to communicate effectively with everybody that's involved, and following up and then being consistent with that, and being consistent in a way that is very timely and people know what's happening. That isn't any different if you were doing change and everybody was in the office. You would be doing a town hall in person. You would then have a space for them to do Q&A. It's the same, but you have to do more of that work as a leader. You can't just kind of give that over to sort of project teams and things like that. And so I think that space has to be created to manage people. And I think we forget that that's a big part of your job as a leader, is the time that is required to manage people. And so you have to make space for that. If it's things that are more political or societal, then a lot of that comes back to your values as an organization and what's relevant and appropriate for you. But it's also about making sure that your line managers have been given the skills to know how to navigate that, because actually it's often just as simple as asking someone if they're okay. Like you don't need to have huge statements and big answers, but if there's something happening and there's people in your team that could be impacted by that, then just say to them, I know this is happening. I just want to check in and see how everybody's feeling. Do it as a one-to-one if that's better and easier. Like, your team more than I do. Do them in one-to-one conversations. But we also have to remember that we can make a lot of assumptions around things. So if there is something happening, if we take things like there was some riots in the UK and it was more around race than it was anything else, it would be easy to assume that all of the people that weren't of that race were not affected by that. Whereas actually everybody is affected by that, because people have friends and relatives, and we're human beings and we have empathy. And it's important to give everyone that space to say, yeah, I'm actually really worried about this or that or whatever it is. So it's just asking people how they are, but not for the sake of it. And that's where the integrity and the trustworthiness comes in. If you're just doing it to tick a box, then don't bother, because it's performative, it's not kind, and it's not credible leadership. So you have to do it with that intention and that genuineness of, I really want to know how you are.
Yeah.
And if you're not okay, I know as a manager what I can do to support you, because I understand that and I'm aware of that in this organization. And I think that's where we get stuck in, what do we say? What are the right words? But just asking someone, how are you doing?
Hey, if you're getting value from today's conversation, make sure you subscribe right now so you don't miss any future episodes of the Aspire to Inspire podcast.